Hey everyone, had a couple requests, a couple questions actually, people asking how we get our jobs through Panther and about deadhead miles and loaded miles and stuff. So I thought I'd give a brief description about that. First, I wanted to talk about what it means to Heather and I to be independent contractors. So before we started expediting, we were employees working for companies, you know. They took the taxes out of our checks and stuff, and we basically worked for this company. But as becoming an independent contractor, you're basically becoming your own boss. You're starting your own business, and that works for if you're buying your own truck, if you're going to drive for an owner who's leased onto a carrier. You're not an employee of the owner or the carrier. You're entering into a business arrangement with them. So to us, it really it's like we're running our own business, and we gotta work it like we're running our own business and try to provide the best service we can, being on time all the time, and also tracking your numbers to make sure you're being profitable, not only for yourself but the guy you're driving the truck for too. You know, you can't just take runs that are gonna make sense to you. You gotta do what you can to make your owner money also. And you know, that's kind of why we started out as driving for an owner instead of buying our own truck. You know, we wanted to learn the business. We wanted to enter into a business relationship with somebody that already knew the business. You know, a good owner, somebody who knows the business, has been in it, has driven before. And that's a real important thing, you know, when you're looking for an owner, is you want to find somebody that knows the business. Somebody that's going to be able to help you be successful, and for both of you guys to make money. You know, being an independent contractor, you know, I'm always trying to do things that can help my owner save money, instead of pulling up to a fuel place and paying to have the tires aired up. I'll find a place and I'll air the tires up myself. Or, you know, if I can change a air filter out, whereas Speedco or TA or somebody, they're going to charge a fee for them just to take an air filter out and put a new one in, which is such a simple thing, you know. I'll stop and pick up the air filter and I'll change it out myself. Just little things like that to try to help him be profitable also. You know, it's a business arrangement between you two, and you want to go into it with that mindset. You know, not that you're just an employee and drive in for a boss. You know, it's a business relationship you're entering into. So one of the benefits of being leased onto a carrier like Panther is that they find the jobs for you, but they're not always going to be great jobs that they offer you. So, you know, you have to take into account if it's going into a decent area where you might be able to get a job out of, and if it's paying enough to pay you and the owner what your expected earnings are. So, for instance, I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm not always going to get a job right out of Houston, Texas. Sometimes they'll offer me something picking up in Dallas. Say we're the only drivers in Texas that have our hazmat, and this is a real important customer they need to get done. So they might ask us if we'll deadhead up to Dallas to pick up a run. So, but that's going to be about 250 miles of deadhead. So depending on how long the loaded miles are, will factor in like how much I'm gonna ask for extra. Now with Panther, they pay what's called deadhead miles, but it's not really much. It's basically enough to cover fuel. But if I'm gonna drive 250 miles, I'm gonna ask to make a little bit more than that. I might ask for 250 miles, I'll probably ask for $1 on the Deadhead and wouldn't settle for any less than 75 cents on the Deadhead. Now, if it's a 250 mile Deadhead for a 500 mile run, that's about 50% Deadhead. So I'll probably ask for the full rate on the Deadhead, which is, you know, whatever your contract is. So the way we get paid through Panther is when we sign on with Panther, we sign a contract and they pay us a certain rate per mile. Now this rate per mile is going to be whether the load's 200 pounds or 8,000 pounds. You don't get paid any extra for the weight of it, but you get paid for the mileage. For instance, starting out with Panther, you start out, it's $1.25 a mile. That's for a single driver. But if you drive with a team, you'll get an extra 5 cents per mile, which will bring you up to $1.30 a mile. Then if you have your hazmat certification, they'll pay even another 5 cents a mile. So that brings you up to $1.35. Then if you have your DOD clearance, they give you 8 cents a mile. And that brings you up to $1.43 a mile. So when accepting a load, you got to figure out what your Deadhead percentage is going to be to your loaded miles. For instance, say I got a load offer for 1,000 miles, but I have to Deadhead 300 miles to get to that load. That's going to put my total miles driven at 1,300 miles. Now let's say that 1,000 miles, I get paid $1.30 a mile. That puts me at making $1,300 total for this load. Then I'm driving 1,300 miles. You divide that $1,300 by the 1,300 miles, means I'm only getting $1 per mile. So you can kind of see how Deadhead affects your rate per mile. So on a 300 mile run, or 300 mile Deadhead, I would ask for $1 a mile on the Deadhead. So if I'm getting paid $1,300 for the 1,000 miles and then $300 for the Deadhead, that puts me making a total of $1,600 for 1,300 miles driven. That still lowers my rate from $1.30, but not down to $1. I think I calculated it would put my rate at $1.23. Now that don't include fuel surcharge. That will still get added into that also. But you see how Deadhead, you know, too much Deadhead will affect your rate per mile unless you ask for a little bit more on that Deadhead. Now, it all depends. Like if you're in Washington State and there's no other loads up there, that's something you might want to accept if it's taking you into a better area where you have more chance of getting a load. Or if it's taking you closer to home and you need to get home for doctor's appointment, kid's birthday, some arranged thing that you have at home and you need to get home, taking that cheaper load for $1 a mile versus all the Deadhead might be worth it to you, you know. It all depends on what you need to make per load. Now, if I'm staying out a couple months and they offer me a load like that and they don't pay anything extra on the Deadhead, chances are I'll probably turn that load down. They'll hit you with a refusal if the Deadhead is less than 40%, or if the load's within 8 hours of pickup time. A few things you get paid extra for is typically we don't unload the trucks, but a lot of times we'll get to a place where they don't have a dock and they have a pallet jack that they want to put in the back of your truck, but they want you to move the pallets to the back of the truck so they can get it off with a forklift. So they'll pay. You'll have to call dispatch, say, hey, we got to do a hand unload here. And they'll pay. They'll have to check with the customer, make sure they want to pay that. But typically they would pay you extra for that. Sometimes the customers refuse and don't want to pay extra, so we don't climb in the back of the truck and unload the freight. The drop-off customer will have to do that. Another thing you get paid extra for is if you get to a pickup and the load's not ready yet. Customers typically get 2 hours for free of wait time, but after that you'll start getting paid an extra rate for each hour that you have to sit there waiting for the load. Another thing you get paid extra for, you can get paid extra for, is a layover. Say I'm sitting in a city and they offer me a load, but it's not picking up until the next day. Depending on how good the load is, I'll usually ask for a layover no matter what. Sometimes they won't pay it if they're not charging the customer for it, but sometimes they'll pay it if they really need you to do that load because they don't have anybody else. So when you're searching for an owner to drive for, it's really good to find out how they pay, how long they've been in business. Basically, you're kind of interviewing him also to make sure he's somebody that you want to drive for. There's been a lot of horror stories out there of owners not paying their drivers on time, shortchanging them on their pay, or not even paying them at all, you know. So when you're looking for an owner, you want to ask him how long he's been in the business. Possibly ask him for any previous drivers or current drivers' phone numbers that you can call and talk to about this owner, you know, to get a little bit of feel on how he treats his drivers. When we were looking for an owner, we kind of got lucky and fell into it. I've been reading on Expediters online for about 6 months, and then all of a sudden I see an ad on the EO classifieds, and this guy's ad I had been reading. You know, he gave a lot of good advice to other people asking questions on the website. You know, he sounded like he knew the business real well, and he treated his drivers good, and so I kind of got a feel for it just from reading things he would reply to on that website. So when I first started talking to him, he even offered a phone number for some other drivers that he already had on, and I didn't need it because I already knew he was going to be a good owner to work for. But, you know, you're entering into a business relationship with this person. You want to make sure that they have the same mindset as you do of both being profitable, not just him being profitable and you're just a body to fill one of his trucks. So when you're selecting a carrier to work for, whether it's FedEx, Panther, Landstar, any of these other smaller ones, no single courier is the best carrier to work for. You know, they are all going to have their flaws, their what they're called as warts, and it's going to be all what you can put up with. You know, Panther, they can be really pushy sometimes when it comes to load offers and whether I want to accept it or not. And sometimes they can get really pushy and they might get upset about it if I just don't want to take that load. But, you know, that's something that I've kind of learned to just deal with, you know. I understand they're just a dispatcher trying to get these load covered. I was probably the 5th driver that turned it down, and they don't know how else they're going to get this load covered now, and they're probably getting frustrated. So, I mean, that's just one, for instance. You know, all companies are going to have their flaws, and not one single company is perfect. You know, do your research and, you know, ask other drivers how they like it at this company, you know, how they do, and, you know, really talk to other people. Word of mouth it goes a long ways, and you can kind of learn what you're going to be able to put up with or what's going to be most beneficial to you. So the two biggest things that I always advise people before getting into expediting is to have somewhat of a savings. It doesn't have to be a big savings, you know, maybe enough to cover your bills for a month or two. Not every week is going to be, you know, a home run week. Some weeks you might have a slow week and you might only do 1 or 2 runs. Other weeks you might have a home run week and get 4 or 5 runs and get like 6,000 miles for that week. So, you know, I always tell people, have a little bit of money saved up to cover you through those slow weeks, you know, until you're able to get established in expediting and you're able to build up a savings where you can take a week, 2 weeks off without worrying about not getting a check. And the other is get as many qualifications as you can. You know, we're driving small Expediter trucks here, and the freight is kind of limited. You know, for instance, our truck, we can carry a total of 8,500 pounds. It's not a lot of weight, you know. Trying to find loads out there for these smaller trucks can be a little difficult if you don't have certain qualifications, hazmat, DOD, a truck with a lift gate, double axle, you know, just all kinds of different things. That anything that can help you get more loads is going to help you make more money. So if you're getting into expediting, trucking, cargo van, straight truck, 18-wheeler, whatever you're getting into, track your numbers. Whether you use a spreadsheet, QuickBooks, Kevin Rutherford's profit gauges, anything you can use to track your numbers. Knowing what you can run for and what everything costs you to run, I can't explain how important that is to know those numbers. I mean, you got to know the numbers, and I mean, it helps you make better decisions, what loads to take, how much you need per mile to run, you know, what you're willing to accept. Everybody's number is going to be different. So that's about all I got. I hope I kind of covered everything. If there's anything I missed, we'll throw it into the next video. And if you guys have any questions or comments on something I might have missed, feel free to comment down in the bottom, and we'll see you in the next video. Be safe out there, and Merry Christmas.